Welcome back to episode 23 of Wyandot Lake, our Planet Coaster 2 water park. Today we are going to be finishing up this more private area within our Tiki Land before moving on to our massive slide complex next week. So make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss that. And let's dive into it. So we're starting off with the slides here where we left off last week. And I really wanted it to have kind of this wooden feel to it. But looking back at it now, I'm not overly thrilled with how it turned out. And so I might change it. I talked a lot about in the last episode having all the rocks there to really kind of make it look like you were sliding down the rocks. And so I'm thinking I might change that out just to match the rock color a little bit better, try to kind of lean into that theming a little bit instead of just kind of the wooden platform. We also added in some water features that you'll go through on the open slide, and both slides are relatively identical, but the closed slide offers, I think, a little bit more mystery, just naturally because it's enclosed, right? So you don't really see where you're going versus the open slide. And so in order to kind of match the thrill on that, we added in those little elements, a little bit of a head chopper as well. So really just kind of adds to it. And then right now what we are doing is we are working on the slide canopy, which is going to go on our platform. And I wanted it to definitely give shade, right? We all know shade is really important in this game with sunburns, right? And so I wanted it to offer shade, but at the same time, I really wanted it to have a little bit of an open feel. It took me a little bit to get going. You saw me kind of struggling there at the beginning a little bit, just because I keep forgetting that I have like random rotate and everything on at times. But we were able to get it going, and eventually we created something kind of very similar to what I was kind of looking for, what I wanted. And our massive slide complex that we're going to build in next episode is actually going to be very similar to this, but just on a much larger scale, which you guys will see here in next week's video. And I am going to add 2 awnings to either side, which is just going to kind of give it a little bit of a symmetrical look, while also at the same time making it look just a little bit more unique, right? So it's going to be symmetrical on the north, south, the east, west sides, but they're also kind of separate and just kind of breaks it up a little bit. I think it looks really nice. I do think this is where we are starting to get in trouble with the cost of this game, right? I mean, we've got our $1 million budget, and you can see where we're at right now. And what I'll tell you is in the next episode, we spend a lot of that. And this tiki area is coming out fantastic. I think it's the best area in the park by far, no questions asked. But what's happening is it's very piece oriented, right? A lot of these like wood slaps that are really small, right? And so we're adding those in. And here's that water feature. And so it's just really adding, right? So like that's $25 right there. And I think we add in like 6 or 8 of them. So the cost is just really starting to balloon here. I'm not upset about it, but it is definitely something that I need to keep an eye on because this area is vastly over budget. And so what I think I'm going to do is I had originally been thinking, we're going to build all of our areas, right? So we're going to finish this, and then we're going to do our center area, and then we'll kind of move on from there. But I think I'm going to change that up now, and I'll touch a little bit more on that here in a second. But real quick, we're going to move over to this water filtration building. And this building is honestly, it's one of the most challenging designs that I've had to do within this park so far, just because of its placement underneath the path. I felt like underneath the path there was really the perfect place for this. It's out of the way, you're not going to see it, and we've got direct access to it from the back of the park, from the back of house area. And so I wanted it there, but it was very difficult to get it to work in. just because you don't have any space above there for for any decorations to really hide the back of the house. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here, and we're just going to copy over the pump house. But then we're going to really try to focus on how can we improve this right here, this kind of top area. And what you're going to see is we're going to put in some foliage, right? We're going to put in some decorations in order to try to hide as much as we can. And then eventually we are going to go ahead and we are going to add in this wood wall. And we'll color it, we'll decorate it, and I actually think it ends up really just looking really strong and does a great job of hiding everything. I don't remember. I went back and looked. I don't think you can really, yeah, you can't really see anything back there. So I'm really happy. We also really focused on the 3 layers of detailing, right? So the bottom layer, the mid layer, and the higher levels as you kind of go back. So it ends up looking great. But anyways, back to kind of the financial side of things. So with this area being so over budget, instead of finishing the entire park, we are going to finish this area first, right? So we've got the massive slide complex left. We also need to finish up the eating plaza and the main west plaza, or I guess north plaza. We need to finish those 2 areas up, and that's going to have a center statue with 2 or 3 other buildings. And I do have the design for one of the buildings done, and it's expensive. Like, I haven't built it in the game yet, but I know the pieces and everything that I need to put into it, and it's going to be a really expensive building. And so that is just something that I need to consider. And it's just also a much more detailed area, right? We need to add fencing. So looking at the financial side of it, way over budget on this area, as I've said already. And we do have a loan in the game that we can take out still. I think it's $240,000 is the max loan, or 250 or something around there. And I really think it's important to add the forest to the area surrounding the park. That way, as we kind of expand, we've got this natural foliage that we've got to deal with. And I think that'll really help the park feel natural as we expand. And so I really think that's something important. So what I'm going to do is we're going to finish the tiki area. And then we are going to go ahead and we are going to start the main midway and kind of get the layout of that done, the basis of it done, I should say. And then we're going to move on to mapping out our last area so we know where it's going to go. And then we're going to put our fence, all back of house stuff in. And then we're going to take a break. And before we build that final area, we are going to go ahead and we are going to probably, or not probably, but we are going to go ahead and we are going to fill in the foliage and the terrain outside of the park. And so that'll be coming here not too long from now, probably the beginning of December or middle of November. So probably around middle of November, middle end of November, maybe the beginning of December at the latest that we'll see that. So that's coming up here in a couple months. And then once we finish that, we will go back to finishing that main area of the park. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what happens if we run out of money? Well, I'm kind of okay with that, right? Because I've always said I really wanted this to be ran like a realistic park. And construction projects run over budget, right? I would challenge you to find a major project like this that did not go significantly over budget, right? It's almost impossible to find. So what we're going to do is if we have to open it with just 3 completed areas, then we're going to open it with just 3 completed areas. And if we have to cut things out of that final area and maybe it's half complete, maybe there's some open plots left, then that's what we're going to do. And, you know, it's something that I know is disappointing. And when, you know, you see something gets announced and you see the images, right, and everything that's going to be included, you're so excited. And it never looks that way because cost is something that needs to be considered. And so I just think that's really going to add to that sense of realism. That being said, if we do have to make cuts, those things are not going away, right? I don't foresee anything in our current master plan as being something that may never come back, right? They're all going to still show up at some point. It just may happen that in our first off season of the park, we're spending a lot of money to finish the park, or in the second year, or maybe we don't do the land at all, and then year 3 we open the land up, right? Something like that. So it's all going to happen. We don't need to worry about that. But back to what we're working on right now. We are putting in some pool decorations here, and I really wanted this to be more than just a pool. I think all of the pools we have so far are more than just a pool in some sense. And that was really important to me here. And so what we ended up doing is we added some water jets into a couple places, which you saw a minute ago. You can kind of see there. And I was thinking about it. I was looking at it, and I was like, I don't really like the idea of people jumping in and out right here, just because this feels like it could be a safety hazard. And so what we ended up doing is we put that little net up, and then we buried some barriers underground. I'm a little concerned with the barriers just because the hitbox on that restricts the movement of our guests and our team workers is significantly bigger than that box. So I'm a little worried that might cause some problems for us, but we're going to take that down the road, see what happens with that. But it really, I think, goes a long way to kind of adding some theming and just kind of making it more than just a regular pool. And then the last thing we're going to work on today is the lighting within this area. And so starting with a quick question for anybody. I know in the latest DLC, we got some new lighting options. Super excited to get to use those at some point. And the thing that I'm most excited to use is, without question, the individual light bulb. That being said, I'm just curious if anybody knows how bright the light is. I still feel as if a lot of the lights in this game just get way too dark, and would love to see a way in which we could go back in and brighten lights up. And so I'm just curious how bright that light bulb is. That's another element that I think we're going to use a lot once I end up getting the DLC, and is really, really, really going to add to the cost. I've not seen how much it costs yet, but I have to imagine that if we're using it, right, so say if we replace every single one of these kind of poles that we're putting down right now, and it would get really expensive. So speaking of the lighting and the poles we're putting down right now, we've got 2 layers of lights, and I really struggled with what to do lighting-wise here. It took me a couple days to kind of figure out. And what I ended up doing is I went with 2 layers. I did these like kind of Viking textured posts at first that shine into the pool. And then I saw those ones that you just saw me do kind of in the background as the second layer. And those kind of light the pathway. And I think it actually ends up looking really good. The strung lights obviously aren't necessarily thematically meant for this area, but I do think it ends up looking fine and it works. We do not add a fence in kind of in between the cabanas and everything. We obviously have that fence that you see right there at the very back of the land, kind of restricting the back of house and exterior of the park, but we don't add in one in the middle. But I think I might go back and change that. I talked a lot when we were wrapping up the boardwalk about kind of the importance of having a fence for safety reasons, especially in a water park where there's a lot of hidden areas. And so I think we may go back and do that here. But we're going to start wrapping this up here in just a few seconds. Next week, we are going to be doing this massive slide complex. And it's going to be a little bit bouncy at first, just because I actually built the slide and then accidentally wasn't recording it, but then ended up not liking it. So tried to undo as much, but had to delete some, which cost some money. And so it just kind of gets a little bouncy, but we end up seeing the construction of the entire slide complex we end up with. It'll be a 2-part episode as well. We will build it next week, and then we will theme it and everything the week after. But that is all I've got for today. I'm not going to reveal how many slides are going to be in it yet, but I can assure you it is more than any of our slide complexes so far. Definitely going to be a 2-part video though. And so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss that video. And we will see you next week.